The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of Your Box Seat. Yes, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. It is Trillion Trust Auckland Cup week. Yes, the race that's been run since 1890, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, feature race on the harness racing calendar. We will get to that shortly, but some of the biggest news in New Zealand racing history was announced by our racing minister, Kieran McAnulty, yesterday. So let's get straight to that to find out what it means for you at home with the new Entain deal.
The proposed partnership with Entain. The TAB have been working on a 25-year partnership arrangement with the UK-based Entain. To most people, Entain is Ladbrokes. I've said from the outset that partnership arrangements are the TAB's business. The board and chief executive are obligated by the law to maximise their profits to the benefit of racing and sport in New Zealand while minimising the risk of problem gambling. And their obligations include operating the TAB in a financially responsible manner. Acting under these obligations, the TAB have determined that a partnering arrangement with Entain will secure their future. My role as Minister is to ensure such an arrangement takes into account the purposes of the Racing Act and the objectives and functions of the TAB. After looking at it very clearly and carefully, I am satisfied that it does. To give approval to this agreement, I have to be sure that the partnership agreement is a good thing for racing and sport, and I've reached the conclusion that it is because all codes have indicated their support for the agreement. The TAB will receive a $150 million upfront payment, of which sport and harm minimisation will get their share. A 50% share of revenue from day one, with guaranteed payments of at least $150 million for the first 5 years. Retention of the TAB brand. I was determined to prevent this deal being a backdoor entry for an overseas brand to enter the New Zealand market. No TAB job losses in the first 2 years of the agreement. And to avoid any doubt, this significant increase in funding comes from Entain. This agreement does not cost the taxpayer 1 cent. But let's also be clear, Entain are not taking over. If they were, I wouldn't be signing this agreement today. This is a service agreement, and it meets my and the government's bottom lines. To get my agreement, TAB had to assure me that these benefits would not come at the cost of increased gambling harm, and they had to show me how this agreement would increase their harm minimisation efforts. TAB have committed $5 million upon approval of this agreement to go towards gambling harm initiatives. This is likely to include technology and TAB New Zealand specific research. This is additional to the existing contributions TAB NZ makes to problem gambling levy. Entain have also committed to investing significantly improving the TAB's harm minimisation efforts. One of the benefits of the agreement will include the ability to bring in Entain's existing harm minimisation technology and structures. These operate at a superior standard to that required by New Zealand law. Partnering with Entain will also give punters a world-class experience. While the operator will not be able to offer products outside of wagering, they will be able to provide a greater range of scenarios and improved odds within those products, reflecting the scale of the international operation. I consider that this agreement and Cabinet's in-principle decision to restore TAB's monopoly make this one of the most significant days in New Zealand's racing history. It will secure the future for the industry. It will mean more money for owners, and it will likely lead to more sponsorship. It will lead to more secure jobs with better pay and conditions. And I believe it will lead to more Kiwi horses being exported around the world. There isn't a major race in the world that a Kiwi horse can't win. And after today, there's every chance.
Well, Minister, congratulations. The deal between Entain and the TAB has been signed off. For the box seat viewers watching this, Are there any disadvantage to them as a punter or as an industry participant? Are we losing anything? We know we're getting some stuff. Kieran, do we lose anything?
I honestly don't think so. You know, I went into this wanting to be reassured that this would be of a clear benefit to the New Zealand racing industry, and I'm absolutely confident of that. All my concerns were satisfied. I went back to the TAB and I said, I want you to guarantee those jobs for 2 years. I want you to have a stronger focus on harm minimisation and demonstrate to people why this is good for the country in that respect. And I also want you to come back and show me that this isn't a backdoor way of an overseas operator coming and operating in New Zealand. All of those concerns were addressed straight away by looking through the agreement. I'm very pleased with where it is. A massive lump sum payment to begin with, a massive guarantee of funding for the industry over the first 5 years, a high likelihood that that will continue to grow over the following 20 years. This is exactly what the industry needed. And this, partnered with the work I'm doing to re-establish the TAB's monopoly and stop money being leached overseas to unregulated online operators, instead coming back and reinvested in the industry, I think together this is the thing that we needed to give the confidence back to investors and participants that New Zealand racing is going to continue to flourish.
Minister, you mentioned the fact that Cabinet are on side with the geo-blocking, we'll call it for an easier term. Is there any chance that legislative change can be made before the election, or is that a 2024 issue?
I think it's unlikely, because this is the sort of thing that we don't want to go beyond parliamentary process. We want to give it a fair hearing. People might have opportunities to improve what we're proposing. But also at the same time, it's actually rare for a cabinet to publicly announce an in-principle decision. The reason why I've asked them to do that is because I wanted to give everyone a very clear signal as to what the government's intention is to help secure the racing industry, and I wanted to be able to announce that today alongside the agreement. I think the two are vitally important for securing that success, and they had to be announced side by side. So that's why I sought an in-principle agreement and got permission to be able to announce that today.
We have many punters who watch the box seat, and if there is geo-blocking and therefore they only have the one option, crucial to them is not being restricted, particularly in harness racing where there are a lot of restrictions. Are we likely, or are we certain to see punters' promise as part of the TAB/Entain policy heading forward, in your belief?
In terms of a specific product, I can't give that guarantee as Minister, but what I have done today is sought to reassure people that this has got to be a fair deal for the Kiwi punter. That if the TAB wants that monopoly and wants to again have sole rights to trade both online and onshore, then that comes with trade-offs. So I've said to them that they have to improve the funding to harm minimisation, and they've got to give Kiwi punters a fair deal, because they'll have nowhere else to go.
So what do you do if they don't? What, say, in 3 months, a punter starts getting restricted to small amounts, not one-off cases, but regular cases? Is that something where the Minister might step back in again?
Well, it depends on how the regulations will be written. And so by giving that clear steer today, is that that's my intention. Over the next wee while, when we work through this, we'll be working with the TAB, we'll be working with the industry and with harm minimisation groups to get these regs right. I'm not going to propose that a Minister is coming in and doing operational type day-to-day decisions. Of course not, absolutely. But a very clear steer from the government as to what our expectations are. If we're going to give you a monopoly, then you've got to play ball in these other areas as well. And I think that's only fair. I agree with the monopoly, that's why I'm pushing for it. It's good for the industry. It means that we're not leaching money overseas to those that don't contribute to the industry. But it also gives the government an opportunity to get things right, set up for the future. That's good for those that work in the industry, it's good for those that export horses, but it's also good for the punter.
So enormous announcement yesterday as I bring Michael Guerin in. Welcome to the box seat once again, Michael, on what was a historic day yesterday.
It was, Greg. Hi to you, big hi to everybody watching around the country. We'll get to that Auckland Cup pretty quickly. An historic day, and a lot of work went in behind the scenes. So firstly to Mike Todd and his team who worked on this for the New Zealand TAB. Congratulations. This is a massive deal, Gregory. These things are incredibly complex and hard to put together. Let's talk about the deal. Obviously they went to market. So they went to everybody who wanted to bid on this, had 4 initial offers, that went down to 3. I presume they took the best offer. That would seem the logical thing to do. So we shouldn't be worried about the deal. It's the best deal on the table. The distributions for the TAB had got down to $125 million forecast this year. That is disastrous. Disastrous for the industry. Even more so for harness racing, because we are the smaller entity behind the gallops, and with less money floating around, less money to promote harness racing, that's why you see less presenters on track, that's why you see less promotion of the industry. So it's now or never, Gregory. At 125 million, that's not sustainable, and we don't have the cash reserves to keep stakes up, hence we're seeing them go down. This new cash injection will see $150 million as the balloon sign-on payment at the start. Of that, $100 million will go to racing, guaranteed on top of the normal distributions over 5 years. Rough math, depending on percentages in the marketplace, which can change, between 20 and $25 million will go to Harness Racing New Zealand. Now, they will get that over a 5-year period on top of the normal distributions, which will grow as Entain grow the pie. That means about, say, $5 million a year to play with. That's good for many reasons. One of the first, obviously, we can bounce stakes back up. Secondly, there'll be money to promote harness racing, to promote education. We don't need too much infrastructure. We're quite lucky in that regard, unlike the gallops. And then thirdly, we're not getting a balloon payment. Give us 20 million, there's a chance you try and boost the New Zealand Cup to $1 million. We have the Winston Peters effect of 2008. Very sustainable, that will be sustainable long term. Let's talk about Entain. Dean Shannon is the head of Entain Australia. Entain is a UK-based company, but they will run this side of the business through the Australian business. So predominantly we won't be dealing with the UK business, we'll be dealing with Australia. Dean is well known as a harness racing fan. Now that doesn't mean he's going to give harness racing anything special, but it means for sure he's not going to ignore it. It's not going to be a case that this is a galloping guy or just a numbers guy and he couldn't give a stuff about you at home in Addington and Alexandra Park. That's not the case here. So just talking about harness racing, this is a good thing. The new boss, the overlord of New Zealand racing, because Mike Todd, the chief executive of the TAB, leaves next week, is a guy who cares about harness racing. Hopefully that'll see more product brought in, more attention to harness racing. Entain have been extremely good with content. That's pictures and videos and you know, podcasts and radio and that sort of thing. That's what harness racing needs more of. So Greg, I think there'll be more focus on harness racing, not to the detriment of the other two codes. There's obviously going to be more money. And the TAB since COVID has been in a stagnant situation. There was so much slashing of jobs at the TAB and slashing of the broadcast and the way the business is done. Harness racing was really affected by that, really affected by it, and we're losing market share because of it, Greg. I think with this new breath of fresh air and new money coming in for investment, I think harness racing will be in a strong position over the next 5 years compared with what it would have been. Now it's up to Harness Racing New Zealand and the people in the industry to see how strong a position that can be. So a good deal at the right time, no negatives. There'll be some people watching this who would say, what about restrictions? Well, the punters promise at $2,000 guaranteed to win if, you know, restrictions are minimum level. I think that'll be either retained, whether that's written into the Act once they potentially change to geo-blocking, which would, if it comes through next year, trigger another $100 million payment. Either that'll be written in, or the Minister has made Entain and the TAB very aware that he wants restrictions to be a fair level, similar to punters' promise, the $2,000 win limit. I don't think it's a big deal to worry about. Most punters don't win anyway, so I wouldn't be getting too concerned about that. And the geo-blocking is a vastly different thing. It's not guaranteed. It requires legislative change, which means it will require to go in front of Parliament and also a select committee. So therefore, if you're watching this at home and you're concerned about geo-blocking and not having the option to bet with offshore operators, you have a chance to send in or even talk to the select committee. This isn't a done deal. They're two very different things. This deal is a good deal for New Zealand racing and a good deal for harness racing. Let's worry about the geo-blocking next year, but I think yesterday, Greg, is not only what the industry needed, it's what the industry has been working towards for 5 years, and the timing was right.
Yep, absolutely it was, and we appreciate your insight there, giving us the overview of exactly what it all means, and there'll be a lot more information to come out as well, but congratulations to all involved, because gee, it's taken some work to get it to here, but it's certainly a big positive. It is Trillion Trust Auckland Cup week. Let's go back to last year's and the performance, Michael, of Self Assured in the hands for the first time it was of Natalie Rasmussen, getting the job done over Spankham, and Kango getting home nicely. Always good to go back and have a look. He was dominant on this occasion, and Michael, many are expecting something similar this week, particularly after he's come up with barrier 1.
Last week he raced against Kango, and I thought he actually peaked in the last 100 metres of the Roy Purdon, but a couple of factors there. He had to sit parked, and he was off 20 metres, Greg, so he had a disadvantage over the shorter trip. His record over 2 miles is outstanding. Not sure barrier 1's ideal, but he has been stepping better from a standing start, and it's a small field. So if he does happen to be crossed early by most likely Kango, or in fact Copy That, Natalie Rasmussen would have the option to A, move away from the markers, or B, if it's Copy That, sit on his back. He deserves to be the favourite because I think he has been very much in the zone this autumn, Greg, whereas Copy That we haven't seen for a month. Now Copy That has won before, over distance. He won the Ballarat Cup after a 3-week turnaround, but I don't really love the idea that he is a month between runs over 2 miles. So if he gets the front for Blair, yes, he can win, and there's a very good chance he will get the front. But Anna Donnelly, who won that race with Kango last week, suggesting it may not be that easy.
All right, let's go to Kango's winning performance from last week. It was in the Roy Purdon Memorial. He found his favoured position of in front. Self Assured was to his outside. He's a sport ducking through on the inside, and we'll hear from Kango's winning trainer, Anna Donnelly, post-race.
Kango Self Assured, he's a sport diving the inside. Big Kango, they couldn't get him tonight.
He loves that, doesn't he? Getting out in front, making him chase them down, Anna, and again, they couldn't.
Exactly, I was really rapt with him tonight. I thought David might have gone a bit slow there in the middle sections, but he's probably found a little bit more speed, the horse, over the last 6 months. So, yeah, he did it nice, and he got headed, and he fought back, and he was a great effort.
He seems to be in a really good space heading into the Auckland Cup.
100%. He's right in the zone. He trialled super last week. His race tonight will top him off really well for next week.
Hypothetical, just for our box seat viewers on a Wednesday. If he happened to get the front in an Auckland Cup, would it be one of those races where you say to David, just keep going, today's the night we roll the dice?
Yes.
That could be this Friday coming up.
Could be, yeah, no, 100%. If he gets the front or he's close to it, I think we'll just roll the dice and have a go in front and see what we can do. Like, he gets his opportunity, he's right, he's ready, and he's right in the zone, as I said, so may as well have a go.
Yeah, and if he is in front, he always takes a lot to get past, Michael. I want to ask you about Old Town Road and where he's at. Yes, we didn't get to see the best of him last week with missing away, and he probably needed the run. He has the brilliance to win the race, but can he?
All autumn, he's felt like he's been racing as a V8 on 7 cylinders. He just hasn't seemed quite as punchy as he did before Christmas. I thought he was pretty good in the Hunter Cup, but since he's come back for the race, he's only been okay. I don't like him this week as much as I would have had this race being 2 months ago. Yep. I think he can win. He's obviously a very good horse, but I get a feeling he's doing what lots of horses do in open class, Greg, which is learning how to be an open class horse. I think John will put him aside over the winter, and he'll come back a vastly better horse coming up. Those comments from Anna interest me. They could be the key to the race, because most people would think Copy That's good from a stand. He's won the last 2 New Zealand Cups from barrier 8. He gets barrier 7. Keep out of trouble, roll forward, get the front. If he does that, extremely hard to beat. Anna's pretty honest when you talk to her. She gives you very straight opinions. And if she says to David Butcher, just keep going, keep going, well, that makes it a lot trickier for Copy That, because he may not get the position he loves the most and is most potent from. Doesn't mean he can't win. But all of a sudden, if you had Kango in front, do this in your mind. Self Assured's on his back.
Yep. So he's clear top pick for you.
And there's no lead for Copy That. Well, so much depends on driver intent and what happens early. Copy That rolls to the front. He's the horse to beat.
Yeah, but just remember, in both of those New Zealand Cup wins, he hasn't been in front by the end of the back straight. He's worked to the lead.
Well, and that's the crucial factor. Kango's the most likely leader, maybe alongside He's a Sport, but He's a Sport would cop a set. There's no doubts about that. So if Kango is in front and Anna is true to her word and David Butcher says, OK, let's do that, then there's no front for Copy That. So I think Self Assured has less question marks over him than any other horse in the race. I think he'll improve on last week by a length or two, and therefore he's the horse to beat. But so much depends on that first 600. If he rolls to the front in the first 600, then Natalie has to make a decision and has to try and come around him, which won't be easy to do in a race that lacks attackers. Just to Colin and Julie De Filippi, to the connections of the Big Lebowski, and even to the connections of Smithy's Terror, thanks for turning up this week.
Absolutely.
This was going to be an Auckland Cup which potentially had 6 horses, and it would have been a disaster, and to be honest, it would have been an embarrassment. So these people have rolled the dice. Maybe these horses can't win. I don't know. We'll find out together. But to those people, thank you for doing that, because I don't want to go to Alexandra Park, Gregory, for a 6-horse Auckland Cup on Friday night, and now I won't have to. And
it could be an historical Auckland Cup, because there's been no 3-time winner of the race. So Self Assured gets that chance. So it could be history making.
Well, who's your top pick?
Look, probably Self Assured for all the reasons you've said. He's going to be in the right place. He's got a gun driver. I spoke to Blair about the draw, and he's obviously delighted. It's very similar to where he's won his 2 biggest races, the IRT New Zealand Cup, so he's very happy. But the first 200 metres of this year's Auckland Cup, for me, is going to be the absolute defining moment. So,
well, it has been for most of our major races. Outside the Race by Grins, the first running last year, virtually every major race in the last 2 years, and particularly the Cups, has been determined by the start. Copy That's won the start of these races recently and dominated them and been really hard to catch. Kango's the crucial horse, and David Butcher is potentially the most important driver in Friday night's race.
Yep, absolutely he is. Right, let's leave the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup there and go to another of our Group 1s. We've got 3 on the night. It's the Reharvest Row Cup, and we have a dominant favourite who's moved $1.50 into $1.45. Michael, his name is Muscle Mountain.
Clearly, Gregory, he's the best horse in the country with Bolt for Brilliance on the sidelines. He should be winning with the best version of him. Again, an unusual preparation, because he didn't race in the Anzac Cup, which we'll see shortly, last week. Most of these did, but he's beaten every horse in this race relatively pointlessly for most times he's tried. So let's go back to last week. Let's look at the Anzac Cup. Here's the other horses. Here's Oscar Bonavina coming wide. Resolve is in front, and Eurocash is in the trail. On the back of this, we'll hear from Nina Hope, not only about Eurocash, but of course about the Row Cup favourite, Muscle Mountain.
Cup, Eurocash drives away. Eurocash from Invictus, all cashed up. Oscar Bonavina, I'd say, maybe just 4th in front of Resolve.
Well, Nina, who would have thought Eurocash galloped away at the first attempt? By the 4th attempt, he was straight into the trail and got the job done on an Anzac Cup. That's pretty cool.
Oh, it's really cool. Yeah, I was bouncing up and down. Yeah, no, it was a bit stressful with all those false starts, but no, he's normally a great beginner, so we were a bit shocked when he galloped the first time, so we were a bit fortunate that it was a false start.
It's been a long comeback process, hasn't it? I believe it was a splint bone in a rear leg all those years ago, and he's a horse who's probably not blessed with the most speed, but he seems to try really hard.
Yeah, he's a tremendous stayer. Like Ben would often say, you know, he'd finish his races off and it would take him half a lap to pull him up. So we always knew that he will see the 2 miles out. So that was the main reason coming up here, to try him, and he may be a year too early for him, but the way he went tonight. But we were off the front, so we had that advantage off the back markers here.
And he likes right-handed.
He does. He definitely trots better that way round. Greg's been telling the group of owners for a while that he'll go better this way around, so people might have thought we were a bit silly bringing him up after running. He won a great race at Addington last start, he ran 3rd, but no, we're out with him, yeah.
You've won plenty of other major northern trotting races recently with the horse on the other side, so I'll swap sides, and over here is Muscle Mountain. So what's he doing at the races and not racing?
Oh, well, he's out in the paddock with these 2 guys, Crown the Moment and Eurocash every day, so I just thought mentally it would be less stressful for him to come here and than stay at home without them.
He hasn't raced for a while, but he looks really fit. There's not much of a belly on him. I believe the track work has been better than good.
Yeah, we're wrapped. He gave him a good hit out yesterday, and super, yeah.
I heard the words track record mentioned.
Oh yeah, we don't like to use.
You can use them because it's the box seat. That's all your friends. People know you on the show. Tell us the truth. Did he break the track record at Dixie's place?
Yeah, but I'm sure it. Yeah, he did. He went really good. Yeah, worked really well.
Okay, so he's spot on for the Road Cup.
He is. Yeah, no. Just touch wood, wrap him in cotton wool, and yeah, we're looking forward to having that bit of a freshen up because I think he was a tired horse when he won here a couple of weeks ago. So he loves coming in fresh. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, really good summation there from Nina Hope. I spoke to Ben yesterday, Michael, and said to him, if you could pick a barrier draw, what would it be? He said, probably about where I am. So he doesn't have to lead, and he's probably not as potent in front, particularly over the longer distance. So even if he was in the running line, he's still the one to beat, and he is the pin-up of our trotting game at the moment.
Well, it's really hard to make a case to back something else. Who are you going to back? Oscar Bonavina? Like, Muscle Mountain has the occasional mental fragility. Occasional. Oscar has a lot more than he does.
Yep.
I thought All Cashed Up was really good last week. Maybe he's in play. Double Delight's a really lovely mare. But do you really want to back them to beat Muscle Mountain?
Yep.
I think the horse was unlucky last week because the standing start was a debacle. Now, that was caused by the horses. This wasn't the starter's fault. The horses were acting like brats. But Resolve was unlucky. She got stirred up. She stepped 4 times in a row. And they took the hood off the last time, and she was just off her nut by the time she got to the front. She has a different possibility this week. She might step to the front because she stepped beautifully 4 times in a row and then hand to Muscle Mountain. Resolve's the best top 4 bet in this race for that reason. I think Muscle Mountain will win. The only concern I have, and we finally got Nina to admit he broke the track record at John Dickey's last week. It took a while, but we got there, is the standing start. Not because I think he'll blow it, but he has blown it in the past, and he's had a really strong diet of mobile racing. So he could be in a situation.
And it's a big full field, 100%. And this horse is directly behind.
Also in last week, they dicked around. Took 4 starts.
Yeah.
Again, it was embarrassing, but let's hope it doesn't happen again. But if they do that again, he might get a bit too heated up. Now, I don't think he will. I think he'll win. But that's the one thing to pay attention to if you're running 145 through your multis. Nothing worse than having a 4-horse multi on Friday and the big fella gallops. I don't think he will. I think he'll win. I think the best bet in the race is Resolve top 4 because if she leads, or if anybody leads, I'm certain they'll hand to Muscle Mountain, and then I'm sure there'll be no attackers. He might get away with the 4-7 Row Cup if he wants to.
Yep. The 104th running of the Reharvest Row Cup, one of our great trotting races on the calendar. As is the next race we're looking at, the third of our Group 1s. It is the Brecon Farms Northern Trotting Derby. Love Me Too, I thought was excellent last week. Spoke to Blair about that. He said in on the markers he'll be a lot more potent, and he led and won the Harness Millions prior to that start. So $4.20 for him. Walking on Sunshine won the fillies race. The Oaks, $5. Sunny's Sister has enormous ability, $8. Confessional, who follows Love Me Too through at $2.30. Here's Confessional winning at the Sire Stakes last week. Not only winning it, a demolition job by 7 lengths after working hard. He runs away and hides first up at the park. We've seen this so often in those colours with this man sitting in the bike. His name is Paul Nairn, and post-race we'll hear what he had to say about this big win.
Sire Stakes 3-year-old trotting championship Confessional. No need to confess on Sunday morning after a win like that. Second over Virginia Cloud.
Well, Paul, Confessional just seems to love trotting and running hard.
Yeah, they didn't make it easy for us. So, yeah, he got a real tough run, but he's a tough horse, and he's, you know, he didn't mind that type of run.
He looks like a Derby horse, doesn't he? He looks like a horse who, when he gets a head of steam up, he just keeps on going at the same speed.
Yeah, he seems to like he's from a very good family, the Habiti family. You know, generally very good stayers, and he's got that attribute.
You have an amazing record of bringing horses to Alexandra Park and them handling Alexandra Park well. What's the key to that?
Well, I always worked them both ways at home. Yeah, you know, but yeah, there is a wee bit of. I had a couple in earlier on tonight which weren't quite rigged up right, so you know, it's just a matter of rigging up the gear. Like they might need a wee rain pricker or something, which you don't need. Addington going left-handed, or a pole, just to help them on the bends. But yeah, just little things like that make a difference.
Does he stay here for the entire of 2023, or do you have any Australian ambitions, or do those things now clash with our biggest races too closely?
Probably have to ask Davey Butt about that.
He's the boss.
He's the brains. He's the brains behind
Davey
it.
Butt's the brains of the operation. This is a bad operation.
You get some pretty shrewd ideas, so we'll see what he says here.
He knows a thing or two about winning big trotting races, does D, but as does that man Paul Nen. Card-on enthusiast above the stars. He's won the Derby with those horses before. I think a dozen of the winners of that race go on and win the Derby, so it's the best form line for sure.
I think it'll happen again. Why wouldn't it? I think the draw is largely irrelevant. I mean, yeah, it could have the thought process that the one leads and it trails, but I don't think it'll be that easy. The gaps in that race last week were enormous. 100 metres. They were just massive gaps. The draw isn't going to matter. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Bagry's filly, Walking on Sunshine, did a really good job from the outside of the front line. I think she might even cross them early. I'm not saying it'll happen, but she might. Really good off the gate last time. Excellent win. I actually think she and Love Me Too both have a hope, but I think Confessional will balance up early and Paul will be able to launch when he wants, and I think it'll outstay them. Yep. It'll be too strong. The one horse who will improve on last week, didn't have any luck, was Tectonic.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, really, especially over the longer distance.
Top 4 chance, around 2.8. It's got a great chance. But I think Confessional will win. But I do think Tom's filly coming into the race after the Oaks win adds another slight dimension. And if she got to the front, I think she'd be harder to bully than the horses who were in front last week.
Some great news out of the Auckland Trotting Club too. Top of the Park, Lyell Creek, Elsu, all sold out. There are still some tables available around the place, including the Boys Get Paid function, where it's $60 you get a buffet meal and your first 3 drinks. So get to Alex Park and have a look out for that. As we go to F break, let's see Blitzum Calder winning one of the great derbies. A demolition job this was. Have a listen to some of the horses in behind. It was a quality lot in 2013.
He's too good in the Brecon Farms Northern Trotting Derby. Blitzum Calder and a brilliant win. Second over Habibti. Third at the line was Shimon.
Welcome back into your box seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Let's go back to the Mares race from last week. Here's Whispering Artist. Nice horse this, Michael, out of the Alta Serena family, so not surprising. Manhattan was very brave though, parked throughout. She possibly is going to be in the same position this week.
I reckon she's probably more chance of getting across to the lead this week. I think there's no guarantee. Nice training performance by Brian and Gareth Hughes, because this mare's predominantly raced at Cambridge, and I think that's toughened her up. But it's a big step up in grade here, and when a horse takes a big step up in grade, it usually shows their improvement curve hasn't stopped yet. I think she'll end up a Group 1 mare at the back end of the season for a Queen of Hearts type race. Good horse. Manhattan, I think, this week, even though she's actually drawn wider, has a better hope. I think she's more chance of getting across, and the horse in her back may not be Whispering Artist. Horse I couldn't work out last week was Folklore. She really underperformed by
she
her
can
recent
do
standards.
that sometimes.
She can be a funny horse.
Yep.
And she just never really got into the race. But tricky bunch to bet into, because a lot depends on what the other drivers want to do inside them. Like if a Mr. Kaplan rolls forward and wants to park Manhattan, tricky. If Manhattan gets the lead, totally different race.
Yep, she's very, very hard to get past. And Brie Express is an interesting runner in there, winning its last 2 in the Canterbury region, now with the Reid McMullen team. Let's go to this unbeaten filly. Her name is Millwood Nike. she just keeps on doing it. She had a tough sort of a week. There was a hoof problem and they got that sorted out. She managed to sit parked and win again.
Black Pearl and Monlonkum, what a minx, but it's in front here. Millwood Nike trying Fortify. Millwood Nike, she does bag another Group 1. Millwood Nike, brilliant win. Second over was Fortify.
All right, what's it like having a horse, Frank, this good?
It's a dream, Michael. It's just an experience I can't really explain, but to watch this little filly go around, and she's getting better and better. She can run from the front, she can run from the back. It doesn't matter where she is in the death seat. She wins, and she's a great little filly, giving us one hell of a ride.
She's won 14 in a row. No New Zealand standardbreds won 17 in a row or more without crossing the Tasman. So she has a shot at breaking a record. Are you a guy who in your league or in your rugby likes those records? Are those things that matter to you at all?
Stats always matter, Michael. If I said no, I'd be a liar. I only heard today that I think it was Auckland Reactor, was it, that won 17 straight? Is that right? Yeah, and we've won 14 now, so we're not far away from that. And if she does it, fantastic. If she doesn't, we'll still love her, you know.
I know when you were coaching, you used to love getting over there and having a crack at the Aussies. Wouldn't it be nice to take her to Menangle in 10 months?
Well, I always love beating Australia. Because when you beat them, you knew you'd achieve something, and I think this filly can go over there and do just the same. But that's up to Mark. You know, if Mark says we go, we go. If we don't, we stay. He's the boss, and he'd never tell me how to coach a rugby league team. I wouldn't tell him how to train a horse. So I think at some stage she might end up over there, but not yet.
She's a great filly. Close to 600,000 in the bank for the connections as well. We look forward to seeing her back later in the year. A couple other races to focus on Friday night. Here's Montana DJ at the trials, Michael, in the hands of Harrison Orange. Yes, he's up spending some time with the master Barry Purdon and Scott Phelan. That's Montana DJ last, getting to the outside. Race won by Ideal Kingdom. Lincoln River was second. They both go round in race 4, but Montana DJ really hits the line strongly here.
Look, it's really hard to win in this grade at Alexandra Park when you're fresh up, but the horses he's racing this week, most of them got absolutely Lebowski'd last week. They got smashed.
Was that the big Lebowski?
It was. The big Lebowski got them. So if he's anywhere near close enough to his best form, he's in the right race. A lot of horses in this race are down on confidence because they got spanked. So a lot's going to depend on the start. If he can hold up, 1, 2, great chance. Gets 3 back on the inside, vastly different thing. And that video made me feel old. I remember the day Harrison Orange was born. I was on air for Trackside and someone told me in my earpiece, I said, Blair Orange and his partner have just had a baby. And I was like, wow. God, that's a long time ago. How old is he?
It is 17, I think. Yep, good league player as well.
God,
and didn't he look like his dad in the Pike? Then, look, if you had a double take there, you'd think, was that Blair driving that horse? Anyway, let's move to race number 3 and Laurie's Legacy, who won really nicely last week. Goes back to the 10 metres in this. There's a horse in behind them in the red hood. His name is Tutangata. Later in the program, I'm going to make him the best on the night. Finds the line really strongly for Paul Nairn, but he's done a nice job, Laurie's Legacy, since coming north.
Has a very good horse in front, likes to get things its own way. Tutangata is off the front here over 2,200 metres from the stand. And Paul said to me last week when we did that interview afterwards, I said, what do you make of the rest of the night? He said, those 2 horses earlier, I'm going to need to just rejig them a little bit. They'll be better for next week.
Yep. That'll do me.
Make of that what you will.
That is why I'll be with Tutangata this week. All right, massive night there at Alexandra Park Friday night. Looking forward to getting out on track, and of course you can take all in the action on track side. We had an opportunity earlier in the week to catch up with Catherine McDonald. This was pre the Entain announcement, so we just put that to one side to get the latest out of Harness headquarters. Catherine, great to have the opportunity to have a chat to you about all things harness racing. Obviously there's been some changes at HRNZ and they've come about through the health incident that the boss, Gary, would have had. So let's update the people about where he's at.
Well, Gary is coming into the office for the first time this afternoon.
Right.
And so we're looking forward to seeing him, and he is sending us a few emails. But he had a major incident, and I have to say the staff were phenomenal in their response. And I think his health and where he is today is as a result of that response. they were cool, calm, collected, and did what was necessary. So yeah, Gary is on the mend. He's doing what the doctor tells him to do, which is a good thing, and he's just slowly going to work himself back into full-time work. And so Liz and myself are taking over what he did in addition to what we currently do, and we will work with him in his first few weeks and ease him back in. But no, he's doing okay.
Yep, great to hear, and I'm sure there's a lot of people will be pleased to hear that. At the moment, there's a handicapping review headed up by Rob Lawson, and I understand they'll be making a report and presenting that to the board later in July. Is this something that's overdue, in your opinion?
It is overdue, in my opinion. We've been doing some tweaks in the last couple of years just to try and help things out as we've talked to trainers. But the rating system itself, I think, works relatively well. But it does struggle as we get fewer and fewer horses. So our bandwidths get wider and the points can have an impact. So the reviews are overdue, and it's probably been kick-started a little bit like by the North Island review. And Rob's leading that, but he's got people from every sector, trainers from every sector, and some administrators involved in that review.
You just touched on a pretty important point, and it's around the number of horses that are available and, of course, our breeding numbers. Are you concerned that, and we'll get to the dates in a moment that have just been announced, that we're not going to have enough horses, particularly in the next 2, 3, 4 years, to fulfil our obligations in terms of race meetings and races held?
There is a concern, and that's why we are encouraging people to actually start their horses more often. So, you know, if we look back in yesteryear, people only started a few times a year, but these days we've got horses going around that are 12-year-old and continue to earn us good money. So, you know, if everybody started their horse an extra couple of times a year, I think we would get through that. The key change needs to be something to get people breeding, and that is a real challenge to see what that would be. We've held our own this year and last year, so we haven't dropped any further, so we might get got to a plateau for a while, but it's how we can grow that.
What about the breeders' bonuses and the introduction of that? How has that worked, in your opinion?
It's worked in some cases. For some people, to be honest, it is
the
just
incentive scheme I'm talking about, obviously.
The incentive scheme.
Yep.
For some people, it's just a bonus because they would have bred their horses anyway. But, you know, probably, I don't know, 20 to 30% may not have bred, so it may have helped keep us at the numbers we're at. As we finalise all those bits and pieces going forward, we'll get a truer picture. So, you know, to remind people to go onto InfoHorse and check to see if they're eligible or not for what they bred this year.
The feature race calendar, it got a huge shake-up once we changed the horse birth date. Has that been reviewed, and where is that at going forward?
So where we're at, the idea is this year it sort of stays as it is, and we've had one meeting on a review just to sit there and go, well, what do we that created it, how do we think it went? So we've got a list of what went well, what we didn't think went so well, what was missing, so what are some of the other operational things we needed to make it happen. And we're going to start then going out over the next month to 2 months and work through a process of talking to clubs, talking to people, getting some, we might do some surveys, I'm not sure of the final way we'll do it, but having some meetings and pulling it back in just to see if we make any changes for next year.
All right, we're building towards the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup this week. Numbers are light in terms of who's going to be in that field. I suppose the question is it in the right place, and is it up for discussion whether it could move again?
Everything's up for discussion. I think one of the problems with the Auckland Cup is the fact that people have to travel and our lack of horse numbers. So if we look at the open class horses in the North Island, there are very few. And while on New Zealand Cup Day we were a bit concerned about having a full field, the majority of those lower rated horses in that race were local. So for them to come along, put their hat in the ring and have a go wasn't going to cost them much. But for them to fly to Auckland or drive to Auckland is going to cost them a lot of money. So they're not necessarily going to do that. So our struggle, regardless of when the Auckland Cup would be, is do we have enough horses to sustain a full field? And we've had a couple of one pull out, but we'll see where we end up tomorrow. And you know, if we ended up with 10, I think we'll be doing okay.
Is it unlikely, and I don't know the answer to this, that it would ever move back into December, and as part of that, because the Invercargill Cup is where it's at now?
Well, that is the big debate, and you've got to look at the Invercargill Cup. So again, it was a small field, but it was its first year. It was a small but good field, but from a promotion of racing point of view, it was hugely successful. And Southland contribute a lot to the breeding industry, a lot to our race course industry, and earn us money. So they should have the privilege of having a group, a major race down there. The only real time to do that is in summer. So if you put the Auckland Cup back to December 31st, what would you do with the Invercargill Cup? So there's some of the balancing acts you have to go through. So while a club might want something one way, we have to look at it the best for the industry.
All right, you said it was a success. How's that measured? Is it measured in people on track? Is it measured in, I suppose, exposure through the media down there?
I think a combination. So it was a success. They had the biggest crowd they'd had since 1986. When people were leaving the ground at 10:15 at night, it was still a beautiful twilight evening, and everybody was happy. They all had a great experience. The promotion locally was huge, and it was just that feedback that it was good to promote the elite in Southland. And what they were saying is that, like your All Blacks or your cricketers go and play in Queenstown, for example. It's not where the cricketers come from, but they go there, it gets good promotion elsewhere. And we got promotion there and in Australia through it. So from that point of view, it was a success, and the overall turnover was good as well.
It shifted this year to a Friday, I think, from memory.
Yeah, we shifted it to the Friday night, and the reason this year is the 1st of November falls on a Wednesday.
Right.
So that means the Melbourne Cup and the New Zealand Cup all move out a week. So they move out a week, and that causes us all sorts of headaches with the calendar and trying to fit racing in. So it was putting the Invercargill Cup on the Saturday before Christmas Day. So we've moved it to the Friday night because we will get better export on the Friday night, and we'll get a better return, we believe.
All right, so as I understand it, we don't get any export on a Saturday anyway, and looking at the dates, I still see there's a number of Southland dates on the Saturday. Are we not looking to get off those, or is it our obligation to the TAB to run those meetings?
We were looking to get off the Saturdays, and we did some analysis because they were racing a lot on Thursdays, and the difference between racing on a Thursday turnover and a Saturday turnover was not huge because they're racing during the day, and therefore we felt that if we put them on the Saturday, we might forego a little bit of export, but it's not much, and we only get 3% of that, not much. But at least the club has a fair day and can get their sponsors and their owners along on the Saturday rather than the weekday.
We dropped 10% on our feature race calendar off the stakes for obvious reasons.
Yep.
We were struggling. Where does that sit going forward, and does where it ends up relate to the potential Entain deal?
Totally relates to the Entain deal. So, as you know, we're waiting to hear, hopefully this week, on what will be happening. And if the Entain deal goes through, well then we should be able to put that 10% back in. Because we know at the conservative level, we understand it might take us back to where we were at the beginning of this financial year, which would be a good start. And then might be something else on top of that. It's not the silver bullet, but it keeps us actually where we're at, probably slightly better. And but if we don't get that, we are likely to get a cut in funding yet again, so then we're going to have to look at the impact of that on all racing.
In your home straight, in your box seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors, one of which is Garrard. So let's go across the Tasman and take in the winning performance of Ultra Orlando. By the way, earlier in the week, South Coast Arden won at Bathurst. Here he is, the old bloke, Michael, beating Expensive Ego, who's done this before. Been in front, you expect him to win, but Ultra Orlando win 26 in his career.
I reckon I could watch this 20 times and I still don't believe it happened. Ultra Orlando hasn't looked like running past a horse for about a year. Stunning. Absolutely remarkable. What a training performance to keep him happy enough to do this. What a wonderful old horse. I believe there's a half for him going through the weanling sale, coming up at Karaka on Thursday. Just a wonderful warrior of harness racing. And when you consider the horses he was racing when he was in the 3-year-old grade, and some of them are at stud.
Yeah, we showed it last week, the size stakes when he ran third. So, yep, he has been quite incredible. Here's Queen Elida not winning. She gets beaten by a Kiwi bred. Ultimate Stride is his name in front, beautifully rated by Chris Lang. And Queen Elida was very brave, but he was too good.
What a forgotten horse he is, Ultimate Stride. As a 2-year-old and early 3-year-old, we thought he was going to be the next big thing. And I think his big body betrayed him a touch at different times, but with Chris Lang being well looked after, look, he'll be a welcome addition to the Victorian Open Class trotting ranks because they need some more good horses. On the subject of Victorian trotting, Just Believe is in Sweden at Stig Johansson's property. He's over there. He races early Monday morning, late Sunday night Australian time, early Monday morning New Zealand time at a heat.
He got a poor draw, didn't he?
Yeah, he probably won't qualify. He's got barrier 7, and Solvada's a very tricky track because it's very banked and then the top part's flat and he'll be on the flat part. I don't think he can qualify for the final, but well done to Greg Sugars and Jess and the connections of Just Believe. He's a wonderful horse. It's a trip of a lifetime. I hope they enjoy the experience, and I would love to see him qualify for the final. Only one Australasian horse has done that prior to Petite, qualified running 4th and went on to run 6th in the final.
All right, of course, Better Zip It, back after the Nullarbor win, goes round at Menangle on Saturday night, also in that race.
Also
Bondi lockdown.
Also purchased out of the weanling sale at Karaka. So you can buy good horses there tomorrow. Proper horses can turn up out of that sale.
And here's the details. If you're watching this on Wednesday, you can get involved online. Huge number of offerings there. 118 weanlings, newzealandstandardbred.co.nz. Like I say, Michael, there's been some pretty good horses go through that sale, including the likes of Copy That too, which was a pretty cheap purchase.
In Australasia has changed more than that sale in the last 5 years. It used to be a dumping ground. You just pitch them out the door and get rid of them and get some money back in because they can't take drafts of, say, 100, the two big players, Yalabara and Woodlands, to the yearling sales. It's a viable option now to buy horses. Some of them are more underdone, leave them on the grass for a bit longer and revisit them later on. So I still think there's a market there for people to pinhook. The top end's not very big in harness racing, so it would be a tight market, but there's the potential there to buy a horse, finance it through NZB, take it back to the sales in March, and maybe make you 20, 30, 40,000.
Yep.
So the right horse, there is pinhooking opportunities, and NZB do finance for those type of deals.
Yep, well, it's well worth looking into. Go to their website. Let's go to Rangiora from last Sunday. They had a couple of finals there. They were the Ann Thompson Memorials. Here's Celtic Arden, the What the Hill 3-year-old filly in the dun colours, getting through on the inside of the Hope runner, Tarapa, who led them up, but Celtic Arden was a little bit too strong in the end, and yeah, nice by What the Hill, few of those starting to fire up too, so the Woodland side doing a very good job, and that was back-to-back wins for Celtic Arden, who looks capable of going on with it, as does Sweet Coco. Special win this was too. Chrissy Dalgetty, 100th winner as a trainer, and of course Carter Dalgetty got win number 50 in the bike at Addington earlier in the week with Watermelon Sugar, and here he is, young Carter, doing a magnificent job. So that was Rangiora action there from last Sunday. What about Addington Raceway on Thursday night? 10-race program they have. Couple I wanted you to have a look at. Beach Ball was one of these, Michael. Big run on this occasion. The young Max Hill will drive him this week. That's him in the Ricky May gold cap coming down the outside. Don Maro won again. But we know Beach Ball. We know he's the best horse in the race on Thursday night. And if he goes like this, he can win.
Yeah, I think he's a horse who eventually will end up in open class. I think he's just taking that step from 3-year-old into older, tough horses. And it's just taking him a little while to get his head around things. I think the best version of Beach Ball, not unlike, but not as good as Old Town Road, might be at the next campaign.
Yeah, Dance Till Dawn, we know how good she's been. She won an Uncut Gem 2 starts back, and she did a fair bit of work in this race. That's her in front. She goes round in race number 9 on Thursday night. Look, if she produces her best, I think she'll win, Michael, but Yeah, she battled on okay in this race, won by Life's a Beach, and it was good to see it back in winning form. And of course, Tony Barron continuing a good run.
Also had a galloper win at Riccarton the other day too, did Tony, so he's got horses all over the place and he'll need the money because he's heading to Royal Ascot in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Have you given him any advice on the top hat?
He's not going to the Royal Enclosure, so he won't need a top hat, but he's taking the family, which means more expense and generally less fun. So I'm not sure he really needs my advice, but he will have a wonderful bucket list trip to Ascot, will Tony and the family. So
good on him.
All the winners needed at the moment.
All right, let's have a look at the map where you can go harness racing this week around the nation. We do go to Addington on Thursday night. 4 minutes past 5, the start of the 10 race program there. The big night, Alexandra Park, Trillion Trust Auckland Cup, Reharvest Row Cup, Brecon Farms Northern Trotting Derby, 180,000 those top 2, and of course the North Island Breeders with Pal Transport. 10 race program, 5:34 the start time there. Winton race on Saturday, 12:04 the 9 race program they have. And Timaru, it is their Winter Cup with Temuka Transport, Jimmy Armour, Jimmy Ray, everything with a Jimmy in its name rather. Looks a big chance, as does Art Attack, who races so well when it comes to those country cups. All right, Michael, this is the last week of our chance to raise some money for breast cancer. We haven't quite got to the 10,000 we were hoping for, so where are you going this week?
I think it's a really tricky night at the park. I could have tipped Muscle Mountain, but he's way too short. $1.50 is probably okay, but it's become $1.45. I reckon Self Assured will win the Auckland Cup. I just think there's less question marks over. I think there's only 2 major winning chances. There's others who could win, but I think they would need their 2 favourites to be disadvantaged, because over the last 2 years, when Copy That and Self Assured have been in the same race, one of them almost always wins. Not always, but almost always. I think this week it'll be Self Assured.
All right, so Self Assured for you, top tip. I'm going with the Neon Factor and 2 Tangata over the 2,200 metres. So we'll multi those up. And Graham Hand has gone Beach Ball, the horse we just profiled at Addington on Thursday night. And Saturday he's gone with the first starter for Craig Ferguson, Frisky Sticks, in race number 2. So they are the best bets. We're going to catch up with the breast cancer people over the next few days and hand over the cheque if you like. Let's hope it's a little bit more after what we've just showed you there. Michael, it's an enormous night at Alexandra Park on Friday night. Looking forward to it. There's still some discussions to be had around whether it's in the right place, but it's been a historic week for New Zealand racing, a very big week, and there's so much to look forward to.
It's a good week. It's the week we needed, and it's a circuit breaker. And I think people in harness racing, once we get through Cup Week, can go away and say, what does this mean for me? How do I want to act? There's going to be some more money coming in. But the biggest problem this industry has isn't the actual numbers. It's a lot of it comes down to attitude. I was at that function yesterday and it was a big deal. And half the comments I heard from people were negative. If you can't be positive about what happened yesterday, and online's full of negative people, this is a circuit breaker. Let's all get to winter and say, how do I want to do my harness racing and my business heading forward? Because the TRB are about to do the same thing. Either catch up, Gregory, or as I'm fined, if you don't catch up, you'll get left behind.
All right, really appreciate your input
good to have you up here.
Yeah, it's great to be back in the studio. That has been your box seat for this week. One show to go in this series. We will wrap up everything Auckland Cup, but for now, we'll see you in 7 days' time.